I don't really talk about this often. But one of my biggest insecurities to this day is my voice. Not just how it sounds, but how it makes me feel about myself. Because it wasn't something I just randomly became insecure about. It came from years of pointing it out, laughing about it, making me feel like something about me was off or wrong. When something like that keeps happening over and over again, it doesn't just stay as a joke. It starts to stick with you. When I was younger, I lived in Minnesota, and then I moved across the country. And when you move like that, especially at a younger age, you don't really realize how different you might sound compared to everyone else until people start pointing it out. For me, it was my voice. The way I talked, my accent, certain words I said differently. It stood out. And instead of just being something unique about me, it was something that made me different. In a good way. It became something people focused on. And when you're new somewhere, you already feel like you're trying to fit in. You're trying to figure out how people act, how they talk, where you belong. So when things like that make you different, people notice that the most. It makes you feel like you stand out in the worst way. And at first, it seemed like jokes. People would repeat things I said in a mocking tone. They'd exaggerate how I sounded. They'd laugh after I spoke, like it was something funny. And when it happens once or twice, you can brush it off. You tell yourself, oh, they're just messing around. But when it keeps happening consistently over time, it stops feeling like a joke. Because it's not just one person anymore. It's multiple people, different days, different situations. And every single time it happens, it reinforces the same idea in your head. There is something wrong with how I sound. And eventually, you stop seeing it as a joke and start seeing it as a flaw in yourself. And eventually, over time, it kind of changed how I acted. I started thinking before I spoke. Not in a normal way, but in a way where I was trying to control how I sounded. I'd replay words in my head before saying them out loud. Tried to adjust my tone, hold back from talking in certain situations. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't want to hear someone laughing. And that does something to you, because when you start holding back your voice, you're not just changing how you speak, you're changing how you show up. You become naturally more quieter and more reserved and more in your head. And in a way, I feel like I lost my voice. Not physically, but mentally and emotionally. And to make matters worse was that it wasn't only at school. There were moments growing up where my voice would get pointed out at home too. In arguments and frustration, in comments that might not have been meant to stick. But they did, because when something is already an insecurity, anything that reinforces it makes it worse. So it wasn't just one environment where I felt like something about me was wrong. It started to feel like everywhere. And when there's no place where you feel completely comfortable being yourself, that insecurity grows even more. And the hardest part is they don't just disappear when the situation ends. Even when people stop making comments, even when you're not around the same people anymore, the way it made you feel will still stay. Even now, to this day, I still notice my voice. I still think about how I sound when I talk. I still question it sometimes. I also still catch myself overthinking things that most people don't even think twice about. And it's not because someone is actively saying something now. It's because of everything that was said before. And that's a surface level how insecurities work. They don't just come from one moment. They come from repeated experiences that slowly change how you see yourself. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you isn't just to talk about my voice. It's because I know there are people out there who have something about themselves that gets pointed out over and over again, that people joke about, or maybe even criticize, something that makes them feel different in a negative way. And over time, it becomes an insecurity. Something they think about even when nobody else is saying anything. For you, it might not be your voice. It could be your looks, your personality, your laugh, the way you act in social situations, but the feeling is the same. It's that feeling of becoming aware of something about yourself and wishing it was different. And if that's you, I want you to understand, just because people pointed something out about you or made you feel like something about you was wrong, doesn't actually mean it is. Sometimes people focus on what's different. They joke without realizing the impact it has. And sometimes the things people say come from their own immaturity, not from truth. But when you hear something enough times, it starts to feel real, even if it never was. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy to just stop feeling insecure about something that's been building up over years, because it's not. I'm still, to this day, working through it too. But talking about it and being honest about it, trying not to hide from it anymore, that's part of taking your voice back. If you've ever felt like something about you made you less than, you're not alone in that, and it doesn't define who you are. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you, and as always, stay rolly.